Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Radiant Achiever Show. Today, I'm excited beyond words, and if you could sit next to me, you'd be feeling this vibration that's off the couch because I have an amazing, beautiful soul. She's a friend, she's an entrepreneur, she's a courageous leader of women, and I want to introduce you to Alicia Ashley. So glad you're here, Alicia.
I'm so happy to be here. This is so exciting. Thank you for
You're
inviting
welcome.
me.
I'm going to gush on you for a few minutes here as I read
Gush
your,
away.
your bio before we dive in. So, Alicia is the creator of the Soul of Sexuality. And I know we're going to talk a bit more about that in our conversation today. She is a bold, no nonsense dating, sexuality, and relationship coach who supports all women in experiencing the fullest expression of their sensuousness and sexuality with confidence. Alicia is also a trauma recovery specialist, and her goal is to help all women eradicate guilt and shame about their bodies and their sexuality. It is her highest calling to help women fall in love with themselves and discover just how amazing they are and have always been. Alicia is a renegade psychotherapist, honors graduate of Pepperdine University, a 12-time marathon finisher. I did not know that about you, my dear.
Yeah.
Author of The Awakening, 7 Steps to Unlock the Secret Behind the Law of Attraction. She's a successful single mom to an amazing young man who I have had the honor and pleasure to know. And she's also an award-winning professional speaker. Through her private coaching, one-on-one VIP days, virtual group programs, live events, this girl does it all, and retreats, amazing retreats, Alicia helps women navigate the often messy and frequently confusing process of dating, mating, and relationships with grace and ease. Welcome, Alicia.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for doing such a good job going through all of those details.
Yeah, it's powerful, and I so love how you articulated everything that you do because I have seen your journey of really coming to own, acknowledge, and fully ignite that calling in yourself. And I am so excited for us to have this conversation
Me too.
today. First and foremost, to honor and for you to give voice to what it is you're doing. And secondly, I know what you're going to share is going to help ignite other women who are on that fence or have, felt that stirring, but just haven't maybe stepped into it in the way that they know is possible or the way they truly desire to. So let's ignite some wisdom for everybody.
Let's dig
here.
in, and I will apologize in advance. I feel myself already being emotional.
Oh, it's all good.
And the already emotional is because we've had the opportunity to witness each other's journey through so much. So it's really bringing up one of the things that you really stand for, and I do as well, and that is support. And I just have felt such enormous support from you and your community that when I think of what we're just about to go into, I wouldn't be sharing this if it wasn't for you. So it's
Oh,
enormous. So you'll
thank
just have to
you.
forgive any tears.
It's all good. Yeah. Listen, we're all about vulnerability. And I think
Oh,
I was thinking this morning on, I forgot why or where. I was thinking back to my corporate days and how, shedding tears was a sign of weakness. But now I'm like, hell no, it's a sign of vulnerability, transparency, and really owning whatever is going on for us in the moment. So
yeah,
beautiful.
for sure.
Okay. So I would love for you to share with our viewers and our listeners that calling that you are currently pursuing and share a bit about how you came to connect with, hear, see, feel, and say yes to that calling. It's kind of a loaded question, so break it down however you want.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And I just can't wait to dive into this. So the calling that I'm really pursuing right now is the foundation of it is to make a difference for women around the world. And so when I've looked over the years where my life's experience can make the biggest difference for women, it has been in the area of sexuality. So I've faced my own demons of sexual abuse in the home that I was raised in at the age of 5. And so over the years, I had the opportunity to confront all of my perpetrators, and it was mainly my family and particularly my oldest brother. But I decided one day in my early 20s that I was not going to be carrying around the skeletons that were really in their closet. You know, they were hanging in my closet because there was so much secrecy and so much shame around it. So when I spoke out, and I'd gotten really specialized help to be able to do that, when I spoke out, it changed the whole dynamic. And I went from feeling shame and insecure. I mean, I'm the person who should be crawled up in a corner in a fetal position in a mental hospital somewhere, you know, from
Yeah.
the violent abuse that I experienced. So I'm so grateful for women like you who really carry the torch to say that we don't have to suffer. And so, having gone the distance of that, I met my first husband. There have only been two. When I met my first husband, I was only 19 years old, and he was a really safe person. I'm so grateful. And he was there by me while I went into this therapy and confronted my
Mm.
family. But he was 20 years older than me, and we really just grew apart. There wasn't any drama or anything around it. And so when he and I divorced, here now I'm a mature woman. I'm not 19. I was with him since that time. And I needed to define my sexuality, you
Mm.
know, and I knew that I wasn't going to wait until I was married, which was, you know, kind of what the religion that I was raised in subscribed to. And I am an incest survivor. So I have to approach my sexuality with care and caution. And so I began to write what has become the 7 principles of sexual power for women. So that was a zillion years ago, like, you know, well over 20 years ago. And so I continued to write this over the years, and I would share it with friends and everybody loved it. But what was in the back of my mind, Chris, that I didn't know was fear,
Mm.
like fear to talk about this in public, like fear to step out and even talk about sexual power for women. Like, who am I to talk about that? And I didn't know it then, but I am the perfect person to talk about that.
I agree. You are absolutely. I've tapped into you
Yes.
more than once.
Yeah. So, anyway, the way the calling has really blossomed has been totally because of the pandemic. And
Mm.
because of the pandemic, the work that I was doing around hotels and resorts just shut down. And I had no recourse. And
Mm.
so I looked through I'm prolific in speaking out about dating, about relationships, about communication skills. My bachelor's is in communications. I looked at all of the things that I had to share with the world. And then this still small voice came out.
Mm.
What about those 7 principles of sexual power for women? And it just like, whoa, like that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. But it still was hard to come out of hiding and still hard to like speak that. And when I
Mm.
posted it for the first time on my Facebook page, I mean, I posted it, you know, I spoke about the abuse I'd experienced, and I ran to my bed and I crawled under the covers and I pulled them up over my head and just like, we're just going to wait for the bomb that's going to explode any minute.
Oh my gosh. I think we were on the phone when one of those early messages and you said, please be here when I hit enter or post or whatever
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
button was.
Like be
Yeah.
here when I hit send because I was
Yeah.
overcoming so much fear. And I'm a really confident woman. I mean, I stand on
Wow.
stages in Superwoman costume. I mean, I do all kinds of things that are really confident, but speaking out publicly about sexuality and about abuse, and this was about August and September last year. in 2020. And so it still had to percolate, and I still had to just realize the second part of that calling that I want to share is I realized that I was going to take those 7 principles to my grave. I had so much fear. And when I
Wow.
realized that if I didn't figure out how to muster the courage, I was never going to be able to leave the legacy for women that I'm empowered to leave. I was never going to be able to speak my truth globally. Like, this is a global calling and a global message. So it was that feeling that the legacy I want to leave and the difference that I want to make is never going to be made if I don't overcome my own fears.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you had a, so there's a couple things before we go on to the next question I want to unpack about that. So you had a huge why, and you felt that this is your legacy to leave. This is the impact that you are here to make on the world. And when you connected to that, it sounds like you were just able to say, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to bring this forward, right? And we'll talk a bit about those fears. And then the other thing is that I love, and I speak to this a lot, is that timing, kind of that divine timing. So you wrote this initial stuff for as part of your healing journey and
Totally.
your evolution, your self inquiry, and would share it. I love that. But yet you felt that, like, did it feel like now's not the time, or that maybe didn't even enter? It was more truly that really heavy fear around, I can't bring this
Right.
forward yet,
Well,
maybe.
I didn't even know how to do it. I didn't
Okay.
know, Facebook wasn't around at that time, and, the internet was, but I didn't have
Yeah.
any idea how to
Yeah.
bring it to the world. So
Hmm.
it was really just lack of knowledge, lack of support.
Yeah.
There are women right now who have a calling and they don't know how to bring it into the world. But if they have the
Right.
right support now in this day and age, there's
Right.
tons.
Right.
Yeah.
So you put it kind of on the shelf. Did it? I'm curious for you to share this journey. Did it ever kind of um, surface back up? How did over those? I don't know. Was that a 10-year span? However long that span was.
Yeah.
Did things kind of bubble up a little bit, but then
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
didn't
I
quite?
led a group. There was one year I led a group and I called it Femme Fatale. And it was really about,
Mm,
exploring your sensuousness and sexuality and dating and relationships. And that just kind of came and went. And, I always shared these 7 principles, but I never really like gave them a proper launching, and I
mm,
never did anything consistent. And that is really tough. I'm a single mom. I've been a single mom
yeah.
through a recession, through a terrorist attack, and now through a pandemic.
And
I
you
am
just keep going on.
superwoman.
You are, for sure, for sure.
We all are. So it
Yeah.
just kind of got lost in the
Okay.
mix. And that makes me
Okay.
so sad to say,
Yeah.
is that it got lost in the mix and it took my back flat against the wall to be
Yeah.
able to say it to
Yeah.
the world. Yeah.
Well, and the thing that comes up for me, Alicia, is these authentic callings, and I've seen it myself, I've seen it in you and other women I've worked with, they don't go away.
You
They're
don't.
always with us. And I believe there's that right time, whether it's takes you getting your back against the wall, or a health crisis, or a major life shift, or whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be a crisis, that and all of a sudden it's like now is the time, and you're just like full on, this
Yeah.
is it, right?
Yeah, and there was a
So
little bit of preparation, like very subtle preparation. And
mm,
it's a sensitive subject, but it's important that I share it. And that
sure.
was a few years ago when the Michael Jackson, the 2 men who claimed to be abused by him came out and spoke. And one of my girlfriends really wanted to watch it. And so, I definitely wanted to see it, but I probably wouldn't have if she hadn't said, okay, on Tuesday night, I'm coming over to your house and we're going to watch it together because I don't want to watch it
Yeah.
alone. And I'm like, that's perfect. And I've got to tell you, as I sat there and watched that and I saw the damage of abuse, I thought, wow, like one of them had a certain level of recovery, and the other one you could see was just still so damaged by it. And so I realized, like, wow, I have freedom of full self expression in my sensuousness and sexuality. And I've gone through horrific abuse,
Mm,
physically, verbally, sexually, spiritually, like all of that. And so to feel free in life and free in my body and free and confident in my confidence and free in my sexuality, like I have to share this. And so that
yeah.
kind of led up, and somehow I still got sidelined, or I still got distracted,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think a lot of it is just speaking it out and then having someone to hold your feet to the fire,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I would love to speak to the distraction or kind of how things get sidelined because, and this is not was not part of my initial questions, but I do feel this is something that happens often with, like you said, without that support. To what degree do you feel like cultural conditioning or societal conditioning played into you, um, going your other path and ignoring this piece of work?
Yeah, I would say 100%, because, like it's not comfortable to blaze a new trail.
Yeah.
It's not comfortable to be, on the front lines. And it's not comfortable to speak out. One of the most beautiful things that happened when I announced this on Facebook on my personal page for the first time, just sharing my experience. And part of the fear was that my brother, not my greatest perpetrator, he passed away, 15 years ago, but my other
Mm,
brother, who I had shared this about with, 25 years ago, and my perpetrators children, who are now adult children,
mm,
are also my Facebook friends. And
wow.
so my fear just was, what are these people going to say when I speak out? It really was the biggest fear, was
Okay.
more my family. My mother's still
Family,
alive.
yeah.
And when I posted it that day and ran and got under the covers,
Mhm.
and within a couple of hours, my sister-in-law sent me a Facebook message, and she said, "Your brother is very upset about your post. He wished there was something he could do to have prevented it."
Mm.
And
To preventing
oh,
the post? To preventing you from posting, yeah.
no, no, no,
Oh, the
to
abuse.
have prevented me from being sexually abused by my
Yeah,
other brother.
yeah.
And so, anyway, I picked up the phone and called him right away because I needed to let him know there was nothing he could have done to prevent it. This all
Mhm.
happened in secrecy, and that, my oldest brother was really, a big guy. He was 11 years older than me. I was 5 and he was
Wow,
16 years old when
wow.
this was happening. And, he told me he was going to kill me if I told anybody. So there wasn't anyone that could have, prevented it, except, my parents being able to set more boundaries and how to treat
Mhm.
me. Instead
Yeah.
they were allowed to kind of be, disrespectful to me. And
Mm.
so, but anyway, the main point is that, to be able to have that conversation with my brother was so priceless,
Oh, I can
to be able
imagine.
to say to him. So, my greatest fear,
Yes.
at least one of them,
Yeah.
was just nothing.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and to the point, and I love you're saying this because it is one of the questions on the list is really when you do say yes, we can be all pumped up and like, I'm going to do this. And then we start that journey and we're faced with obstacles.
Yeah.
So, and many obstacles, right? It's not just one. And it sounds like one of your really big ones was fear around how the family was going to react, but you did it anyway.
Yeah. I did it
Yeah.
anyway, and it felt amazing. I'm so sorry to say this. It felt so amazing that I struggled a little bit with beating myself up. Like, why didn't you do this before? Like,
Yeah.
how come you let this fear? Like, I had to have
Right.
this little, moment with myself that was like, okay, Alicia, back the bus up.
Right. Right.
This is the
Right.
timing. This
Compassion,
is
be compassionate. And yeah.
I
Well, and I
had to be compassionate, but it was to really see on the other side that I made it all up, was hard to take,
yeah.
because sharing the soul of sexuality with women around the world. And because of the pandemic, again, I've been able to do that through virtual classes. And
Right.
to do that has brought me so much joy,
Mm,
and it's brought them so much joy. I
right.
mean, to
So
have
that
women,
far, sorry, and that far outweighs the fear
oh,
that you had been holding on to
totally.
for all those years, probably, right?
Totally. Oh, it
And
far
yeah,
outweighs it. It
yeah.
far outweighs it.
Well,
Yeah.
I love that point because again, who doesn't have a fear about something? Who doesn't
Yeah.
have a fear about
Yeah.
stepping forward in a courageous way to stand up and say, this is important to me. I'm gonna do this. And I love that. I mean, your case is so powerful because it's such a vulnerable topic. It's such a, oh my gosh, like I don't even know, what would be more vulnerable is and that you were able to say it was so worth it. And I feel better and you're freer. And now I can bring this message and help people. So whoever is stuck in fear, know that chances are you're making it bigger than what it is. And you absolutely can work your way through it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I want to say what the soul of sexuality is, because I
perfect.
wrote those 7 principles, and I want to kind of give um, a notice to meditation,
Mm.
because part of what I've done, I've practiced meditation over, like 20 years now. And it's hard. Everybody gets that it's hard, but it's something that is called a practice for a reason. And when I stepped into this space to speak my truth, I would be in meditation, and that's when the words "the soul of sexuality" came out,
Mm.
because it's so much more than these seven principles. And so when I finally just massaged it to where the message felt really comfortable to me, like the soul of sexuality is that part of our sexuality that we were originally born with, before there was abuse, before there was addiction, before there was criticism. And so it's just simply returning to the
Mm.
fullest expression of our sexuality as possible, without any guilt and shame or any residue of any kind that others would put upon us.
Yeah,
And
it's
so,
so powerful,
yeah, some of the
so powerful.
conversations have been so amazing. One of the virtual classes, it's like Hollywood Squares these days, or the Brady
Yes,
Bunch. So I'm
yes.
sitting right here and I'm looking at a screen of about 10 women. And by the end of our 3-hour virtual class, each one of these women spoke about the shame that they were giving up. And like, what I have them kind of walk through is saying, I am done with,
Mm,
and then fill out that blank. And I am done with feeling bad about my sexuality. I am done with hiding out in an overweight body so that I can,
mm,
deal with the attraction that men have. I am done judging myself for my sexual preferences. And it was just one of those
oh,
moments where tears from all 10 Hollywood squares
oh,
were
oh,
just flowing. And part of that was, I am done judging my libido, whether it was
mm,
the women who were judging their libido because it was lower than some of the men they had, or judging their
yeah,
libido because it was higher than some of the men. So they were judged. And it was just,
yeah,
to open this space for women to be authentic with their
mhm,
sexuality. And so that's why the soul of sexuality just really resonates, because it
yeah,
is the God given part of our sexuality that before all of these other things happened. So,
yes, beautiful. It is powerful work, and I know you've shared some of the the things that you do in the workshop, and I can see how why it resonates so deeply with women, because you, number one, you provide a very safe space, and number two, when we have that ability to voice whatever it is we're feeling and needing without judgment, in full acceptance, that is a transformational moment for our lives and everybody else that witnesses it. So which is what I love about this show, because when I hear you take a stand and name, this is what I'm being called to bring forward, and you're giving yourself permission, you have a safe space to do it. We have a safe space to acknowledge and accept all those things, the fears, the obstacles, the vision, without judgment. Then we can turn toward it with so much more power and conviction to continue to bring it forward. So
yeah, and that conviction is something that you don't have until you take the first step.
yes.
Like the first step is so hard to make. If you're listening right now and you've got your calling, just please let Chris and I push you over the edge today.
We'll hold hands and jump together.
Yeah, we
I
are.
don't like to
We're
push.
giving you the nudge, the gentle
jump with
nudge,
you.
but
Right.
we'll give you a kick too if you need it.
Love
But
it.
that conviction
Oh,
can't come through
yeah.
until we've taken a first step.
Right.
Because then it's
Right.
just all floating around in our mind and we're justifying, I call it JRD, justification, rationalization, and denial. Like we're
Mm.
justifying, we're
We're so
rationalizing.
good at that. We've become so good at that in this culture.
And so, but I
Totally.
love the conviction that I have now. And, you know, part of the whole pandemic and the whole, you know, just upheaval of my life personally has led me to being able to, or needing to move. And
Mm.
so needing to move out of my home that I really love. And when I really think of that, what I came up with was the desire, like retreats. I was leading retreats years before retreats were popular. I was taking
Yeah.
25 women up to Lake Arrowhead when I had my private therapy practice and just loving it. And so that's kind of where my expertise and genius lies. And I decided that I'm going to move to Bali for
That's
9 months or longer. I don't know. I don't even,
yeah.
I've never been to Bali.
Wow.
And I'm packing up everything, either giving it away, selling it, or storing it and moving to Bali. But what better place to really do a deep dive into the
Yeah.
soul of one's sexuality?
Yes.
And for
Totally.
women who have experienced trauma, like creating that safe space in a live setting. And
Yeah.
I've led 6 live retreats during the pandemic. And 2 of those were on the soul of sexuality. And to come together as women and be vulnerable and talk about these
Yeah.
things is so powerful. It
Yes.
just creates an inferno of empowerment for women. They
I
don't
love it.
go home the same.
No, they don't. And well, and I so love in what you're sharing that you, and you know, tell me if I'm wrong or not, if I'm picking up on this correctly, during this time when you heard that voice, that message, and you brought it, the soul of sexuality, to the world in a bigger way, then you were in this place of how can, given the dynamics of the world right now, how can I serve? And so you put together these virtual retreats. I know you had some prior to the, there was a facility where you're able to do some in-person, like safe kind of formats. And so you didn't let a big obstacle stop you. You stayed open to, which is such a radiant achiever trait, like how, that curiosity of how can I continue to step forward in my vision, just despite what appears to be an obstacle, right? You just kind of climbed over it, went around it, kicked it out of the way, whatever that is. So I want to acknowledge you for
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And kind of the follow-on is a question then is, how have you personally shifted since you've said yes to the soul of sexuality and bringing that forward? What have you
I
noticed about yourself?
I think one of the biggest things is just the joy. Like, I really feel like because I've been able to overcome so much, helping other women overcome things has just brought me so much joy. And that being particularly around sexuality. And of course, sexuality always weaves itself into dating one way or another. And so, and marriage. So I'm working with, single women, married women, and I'm working with lesbian women, heterosexual women, women who don't know what they are yet. And
Yeah.
that's all good. And so I
Right.
think that what I have encountered, number one, is just joy in sharing a message
Mm.
that I'm uniquely qualified to share. I know a lot of women who have overcome trauma and abuse. I don't know a lot of women who have confronted their perpetrators straight on.
Mm.
And I did that. And when I spoke to my brother on the phone that day, he said, "No, I don't remember doing that, but if I did, I'd be really sorry." And then he went into judging me. "Jesus is coming soon and you need to repent your sins and you need to blah blah blah." And I said, "No, all I need to do is get off the phone with you." Catch you later, alligator.
Setting a boundary here, brother.
Yeah, exactly. But guess what happened? 6 months later, my phone rang, and this is before caller ID, and somebody was sobbing on the other end of the line. And it was him. And
Oh.
he said, "I do remember. I'm incredibly sorry. And Jesus is coming and you need to repent
Oh
your
God.
sins." And
Oh
I
my
said,
gosh, that's
"Thank
so
you for
funny.
calling today. I wish you
Wow.
all the best."
I love
But
it.
that's partly why I say I'm uniquely qualified, because rarely
Hmm.
has anyone had a direct conversation with
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
worst, most
Right.
violent perpetrators, and like really come out, I want to say unscathed, but the only reason I'm saying unscathed is because I have done a ton of work.
Yeah. Right. So you have definitely committed to, and we talked about commitment a bit before we got on the phone, is you've made a commitment to yourself. So, talk about, um, I call that an inner power, however you want to frame it. But would you say, share a little bit about how you owned your inner power and what that looked like for you to be able to then to step into to all of this, right? To
Yeah.
face all of this.
Yeah, I think it's a long-term growth process, because learning that self-love and worthiness, like coming out of a
Mm,
very abusive and dysfunctional home, I felt like I was the dirt on the floor. I mean, I
mm,
had no self worth. So it took a lot of years of, doing some of the mirror work that you really talk about as well. And being able to learn how to love myself and to know that I deserve to be happy and that I deserve to have the fullest expression of my sexuality and not feel any shame about it. But most of all, that I just deserve happiness. Like when you're
mm,
damaged and abused, like that little dog over in the corner that you reach to
yeah.
pet it and it shrivels back because it thinks you're going to hit it. Like that was kind of me, is that
Mm,
I had such low self-esteem that I always felt like somebody was going to hurt me and somebody was going to take advantage of me. So that was part of the reason that I came up with those principles. But that commitment that you're speaking, and it is a power, it is an inner power. And so for me, like crossing that threshold of waffling, I might move forward on this and I might not. And it really came in September when I said, "Okay, I'm going to do a virtual class." And I put it on my calendar. And then I didn't tell anybody about it. And that day came and went. And one day I looked at my calendar and I was mortified.
mm.
Like, I was so committed. How did this happen that once again, this has gotten pushed to the side? And divine intervention came in and said, "Alicia, you have to tell somebody." It
Uh,
doesn't work if you just put it on your calendar. And so, sheepishly, I announced it to just as many, I have a small mailing list. So I announced it there and I announced it to friends. And I cannot tell you how intimidated I was by my own calling. Like
mm.
I'm not ready for this. I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to do it. And
Yeah.
so like that commitment coming to set the date and then tell others about
Mm.
it, and then to suit up and show up and just let it be however it was with
Yeah.
no expectations, like you hear so many people, whether it's T. Harv Eker and, Anthony Robbins and a lot of these people who'll say they started in somebody's living room with 3 people there.
Yep.
And so I was totally open to that being how it was, and that first one I just did no charge, just everybody who wants to be there. And there were 30 women there who spent 3 hours with me.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
that really, like that first step is what
Yeah.
builds the
Ugh.
commitment. Like
You
there's
need
no
so much.
commitment there as long as you're
No, I
waffling
know.
in the
I
background.
know. It does take so much energy. I always think of the rocket for liftoff. What 90% of the fuel is used, and we're not rockets, obviously, but there's a lot of energy that's used to do that first thing. And so many things you said I love, and I want to touch on a couple of them real quick. Um, first and foremost is, again, being willing to take that step and then seeing that, well, I took a step, but I really didn't, right? It's kind of a false start, but you realize, you have that awareness that, okay, this is okay, but if I'm really committed, I need to tell people about it. And you, even your whole journey, as you shared that personal growth journey, which is a great reminder for everybody listening, is it is a journey. We can look at somebody on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, and they look like they've got everything perfected. And the truth is, they just may be further along than we are. And that's okay, right? We all have to start with that one person or that 2 or 3 people in front of us, and that is our perfect journey. So to whatever step somebody is in, to
Mhm.
to love and appreciate and honor where you're at, because it's not the end. It's part of your journey that's going to last if you choose your whole lifetime.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And what you're touching on behind all of that is something that I'm totally guilty of. And it is a cancer that destroys your life. And that is compare and
mm,
despair. Like
yeah,
when
yeah,
I would get into comparing because others are so further down the way than I am in launching programs and stuff, it is
yeah,
compare and despair. And
yeah,
it just kept me in the state of fear and
yeah.
perfectionism. Like I'm not as good as they are. And that there's no way to compare and not despair.
Right. I love
If
that.
you're comparing to learn, okay, what can I learn from that person and
Hmm.
allow it to catapult you forward is one thing. But comparing and then going into some kind of fear and negativity is so damaging. And for
Yeah.
me, what I realized is it was a way that I was kind of abandoning my own journey and abandoning
Mm,
my own calling and using perfectionism and fear to just keep me stuck.
yeah.
You
Do you
know, and I
feel in doing that, I'm big about taking responsibility for your life, right? And
Mhm.
I know we've had conversations on, the guru and listening to this coach and that coach or whatever. And there's, again,
Yeah,
there's nuggets for us, but sometimes we tend to give too
yeah.
much of our power away. Do you feel now, with the shift that you've made to really take a stand for the soul of sexuality, that talk about that piece of it? Like, do you feel you're like owning more, um, you're more fully, taking responsibility for your journey and your path and your fulfillment?
Yeah, completely. Like crossing that initial line. And I swear it's shocking. Like all it took was to cross the initial line. Just
uh,
getting across that first one just was like the whole thing just blossomed. And part of the reason is that there was just so much affirmation, like yes,
mm,
like I really believe that when we are stepping into our authentic selves and speaking our truth, and a truth that's hard for women to speak or hard for anyone to speak, doesn't have to just be women, then
yeah,
I believe that as we do that, that feedback that comes back to us just is like watering that plant and just giving us the room to just
totally.
grow. And so
Yes.
that's what I felt was just
Mm,
really this like fresh air, like I'd just been stuck in a closet,
Mm,
because
I
those
love
7
it.
principles of sexuality were stuck in a closet, you know?
Yes,
And so
yes.
like bringing them to the world just gave me the joy and the commitment to go even bigger and stronger. And this is all in the middle of a pandemic,
Yeah, yeah,
so I just can't wait until, more people are comfortable gathering and, being able to
yeah.
have like hundreds of women touching on the soul of their sexuality, and
Wow.
having that awakening to what their sexuality is and how they can release shame.
I love it. So that's a perfect lead into my next question is, as a result of you saying yes, what do you now see is possible for your business?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question.
Well, I
Considering
see
in
tons of
98
retreats.
days,
You
considering
know?
in 98 days, everything you see
Yeah.
behind me is going to be sold or given away, or
Yeah.
I'm not putting those things in storage by any means. Um, so what I see that has opened up now is like, I feel like whatever the details are, I'm not so connected to the details, except this calling is pulling me forward. Like, all I need to look at is what is the next indicated step. And
Mm,
so for me, the next indicated step in the next 98 days while I'm here is to continue leading virtual workshops. And if I can get locations for live retreats and workshops, then I'll continue to do that. And it was so funny because last weekend I did a live 1 day meditation retreat at a church nearby. And I'm here to tell you, every single leaf blower in Tustin, California was leaf blowing everywhere. So we won't be using that facility again
I
on a
love it.
Saturday. And since they have church there
Uh,
on Sunday, you know, we won't
that's
do that.
too
So anyway, but
funny.
you just have to laugh.
You
But
have
in
to laugh.
respect to
Yeah.
response to the question is, there is a pulling,
I love
like it's
that.
an inner
Yeah.
dynamism that is just, okay,
Mm,
what's the next step for me to do?
mm. Yeah.
And it's just clear right now that's going to be virtual retreats, and any one-on-one work that I can do with those women who want to go deeper, that's perfect. And
Yeah.
the commitment is there. I'm suiting up and I'm showing up for my calling and my message to the
Mm,
world. And
I
it is
love it.
women around the world. That was always what was in the back of my head, was,
Ah,
not
okay.
just US women. It's like, I'm here to make a difference for women around the world. And before the pandemic, I had no clue how I was going to make a difference for women around the world.
Now you
So
know. Now you
anyway,
know. It's
it's
amazing.
really great. And thank you for
Yeah.
creating this space for all
Sure.
women to really own whatever their calling is,
Yeah.
and overcome their fears to be able to step into their power. And that's
Mm,
really what it feels like when I've crossed that threshold, is that it feels really powerful, like
yeah.
not being stifled.
Mhm. Thank you, and you're so welcome. This is my work to bring women like you, into these conversations. And so, I'm all about women living, leading, and achieving not in that old structured way society has us, but truly tapping in from the inside to listen to our worth, listen to our intuition, and to honor that true essence and bring those callings forward just the way you described it, just knowing that what's that next step, not having to have it all figured out, not
Mhm.
stressing and all of that. So that is to me what radiant achievement or being a radiant achiever is all about.
Yeah, yeah,
What does being a radiant achiever mean to you? Because I always love
yeah.
everyone's different perspectives. There's not one
Right.
definition, right?
Yeah, and I have loved the word radiant achiever from the day you shared it with me,
Mm,
is that it feels so authentic to women. Like when I'm living my life authentically and I'm in touch with my feelings, I'm in touch with my core desires, I'm in touch with where I want to go, then that radiant achiever in me has the space to blossom. And
mm,
so what it is not is equally as important for me. It is not me getting rigid and saying it has to be this way, and that if it doesn't happen that way, well, that wasn't good enough, and judging it.
mm,
And so, to me, a radiant achiever is that I'm comfortable in my skin, launching my calling, and I'm feeling radiant when I'm doing it. I'm not feeling stressed out. And I mean,
Right.
there is, and I love your analogy with the rocket, because it is true. When you're creating something, the hardest part is initial. And so when I created that first workbook to go with my class, it must have taken me 80 hours. But after
Wow.
that, it's a little tweak here and a little tweak there. But those initial, like that workbook, just when I presented it, I
Wow.
felt like the angels should come down and sing the hallelujah chorus, because initially it is a lot
Uh,
of work. But after that, it's something else. So the radiant achiever to me is that every single one of those 80 hours that I spent creating that workbook, I was thriving.
I
I
love
was
it.
connected to a woman reading those words and her life being transformed. I
Mm,
was connected to how the thought that I put in each module was going to have an impact. So it, even though it was a lot of work, it wasn't this forced thing. You know, at some point I was making a ton of cold calls to hotels, because that was my primary kind of customer at one point. And I remember when it finally came down to it, it's like, I cannot make another cold call. Like, don't make me
oh
make
my
another
gosh.
cold call. So the juxtaposition is like,
Uh,
I really think God has to give us the divine door slam.
mm,
Like,
yeah.
God has to give us the divine door slam, or I would still be making cold
Yeah.
calls to
Yeah.
hotels,
Yeah.
you know?
We are
And
being
so,
called, women are being called to step up and to be their authentic selves, right? We have these conversations all the time, and the more we do that, and no matter how uncomfortable what we have to face, the stories, the layers we have to peel back to step into what you're doing and to feel into who you're serving by putting this workbook together and by sitting down for these 80 hours and taking the time to tap in, and what are those core exercises and reflections and activities that I can give them. It's a completely different energy. It's like you're
that's
serving at
beautiful.
your highest level.
I like what you said of feeling into the women I'm serving. Because if I'm
Hmm.
feeling into the women I'm serving, I'm not going to hold back anything. I'm
Yeah.
not going to let fear stop me, because if I'm feeling into the women that I'm serving, I know my message can have a tremendous impact on their lives. And so
Hmm.
then
Yep.
I'm not dummying myself down. I'm not minimizing. Oh, nobody will want to hear that. Or,
Right.
somebody's going to criticize me.
Right.
Me. Doesn't matter. Like, I'm
Right.
feeling into the woman I'm serving, and I'm serving a woman who lives in shame and who
Yeah.
doesn't allow herself to enjoy her God-given sexuality, and doesn't speak up for what she wants and needs, and hides out, like, it's just a beautiful process to come
Hmm.
out of hiding.
Beautiful. Well, you are absolutely a radiant achiever in my book.
Thank you.
And so I'd like to end with this last question before we wrap up and have share with people how to get a hold of you, is if you could share with our viewers and our listeners like one piece of wisdom related to saying yes to your calling, or if they're stuck and they haven't said yes, like what would you love to share today in closing?
Just do it. Just do it. So that's the first piece of wisdom. But
Okay.
but really behind that is, like, get the support to be
Mm,
able to overcome the fear. Like, I'm not unique. The thing that stops most women from stepping into their calling isn't lack of education, it's not lack of money, it's fear and lack of support. Like,
mm,
you can't underestimate how powerful it is to have, kind of a posse of women who are like uplifting and empowering, because there's always going to be those naysayers, and so having the ability to keep going forward in spite of that is really, really huge. So,
mhm.
if I was to look back and share my wisdom with my, pre-launch self, I would say, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get some support, and launch this thing.
I love it, Alicia. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Such a fun conversation, and I know we could go on for another hour
Yeah.
here, but we'll stop this. We'll do a follow up when you're in Bali. How about that? We'll
Yeah, let's
connect from there.
do. Let's do.
So, if you could share, what's the best way for people to connect with you, find out more of your work, website, social media handles, whatever you'd love to share?
Yes, right now I have groups on both Facebook and on Instagram, the Soul of Sexuality. And so I'm present in both of those. And I love, answering questions. And obviously, I'm doing virtual retreats at times of the day. It's really interesting because at 9 a.m. is an unusual time to be talking about the soul of sexuality. But 9 a.m. in California is 5 or 6 p.m. in London. And
Yes,
so, since I do have kind of a global following, it's an odd time, but I also obviously do them at other times.
awesome.
So, anyway, that's where you can also find out about the upcoming retreats that I'm doing. It's
Perfect.
on the first Facebook page,
The
or
soul of sexuality.
the
Okay.
Soul
And
of
then
Sexuality. Yeah,
I'll make
it's
sure in the show notes they have your
Thank
name and
you.
all of
Thank
that
you. And
too. So
ultimately I will have a website, and it's in the all of that's in the ramping up stages.
fabulous. Good. Well,
Yeah.
you're going forward with what you have. I love that. Love that.
Yeah. Thank you
You and
so
your
much. And thank
story and
you
yeah.
for being this beacon, Chris,
Mm.
for women to really see and really be supported by. It is huge.
Mm, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Grateful to do it. So
Thank you.
that's our episode for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive conversation on Alicia's journey, what she's bringing to life, how she got there, what she's overcome. And I hope something today has inspired you to say yes to your calling or to take that next step if you're already on that journey. We're here for you. We love you. And we look forward to connecting again real soon. Bye for
Thank
now.
you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.